Welcome to Represents. Today's guest is Dr. Laquita Frederick, also known as Dr. Q, an award-winning pioneer in the sports industry who combines her academic prowess with extensive practical experience to champion causes such as, drive cultural innovation and make global social impact through sports. How are you doing, Dr. Q?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for taking time from your busy schedule to break down the business of sports with me and my viewers.
I will do my best.
That's awesome. So the first question I have for you is basically, can you share how specific sports initiatives have successfully addressed social issues and fostered inclusivity?
Great question. And I think it's also not just a great question. It's an excellent way to establish kind of the baseline of how sports shows up in culture. Um, there are always going to be specific examples, and I'll share some of those in a moment. But I also like people to just take a beat and just think about the world that we live in and how sports has showed up and how sports has changed the world and how it has changed society and how it has fostered inclusivity. If we go back as far as the 1934 Olympics, that was when Jesse Owens was a 4-time Olympic gold medalist at the Olympics being held in Germany at the time that Hitler was in power. And so there was a strong Aryan sentiment at that time. And even though to most of us, including me, we weren't alive, but we know about it, we read about it. And I actually did attend Ohio State, and I worked the Jesse Owens Track and Field Classic every summer. That's one of the ways it happens at a macro level. If you think about the macros, if you think about Muhammad Ali choosing to he literally had to sit out a few years of his boxing career because he refused to fight in the war. He didn't feel like it was a just war, and he didn't feel like they had done anything directly to him. So even as a nation, the U.S. may have found cause, but as a human, he was like, these people didn't do anything to me. And so that's a way that he brought attention to the war effort. If we look at modern times, we look at Kaepernick. He took a knee. And the irony in him taking a knee is he was taking a knee to bring attention to racial injustice and police brutality. But at the same time, it was actually a Marine who asked him what it is that you're trying to protest, because at the time he was just sitting. He wasn't on his knee. And that Marine is the one who said, if you took a knee, it would be more significant, because a knee represents a lot of things. People kneel in the military as a sign of respect. People kneel when they pray. So there's a lot of power in that motion. But when he started taking a knee and others joined him, we saw a lot of energy there, right? So he got the attention he needed for the cause, but it actually went beyond the cause. A lot of people started turning their attention to him, the individual. And yes, I do think he's been unfairly kind of ostracized from the league, but ultimately that was not what he took a knee for. He took a knee to get attention on this social issue, this social reckoning that was happening. And what a lot of people don't know, unless they dig in, is that the NFL did set aside, I think it was $90 to $100 million towards those efforts. So they literally put their money where their mouth was, because he put that type of pressure campaign in place. It cost him his career, but he actually accomplished his goal. Now, I think it's safe to assume the media, fans, team owners, a lot of people hijacked the narrative and made it something other than what his intentions were. But his intentions were solid, and there is work being done there. But that's not the story that, I think in journalism it goes, if it bleeds, it leads. So the fact that he did effectively get the NFL's attention on that issue and get them to put money there, or even bring Jay-Z to the table to manage the halftime performances when there was a lot of controversy there. I think that's the powerful statement, but that's not the one that is in the news. The one that makes the news is the one that's the controversy, even if the controversy is no longer aligned with the original societal issue. So those are some of the ones that I think happen at the macro level. The macro level. Then you have the macro. You have things like the NBA has an NBA junior program, which connects the NBA to youth basketball. They want kids to enjoy basketball. They want to promote diversity and inclusion. They want to teach fundamentals. And so I think that that's tremendous because the NBA knows who their players are, and they know what their players care about, and they know who their fans are and what their fans care about. And so they tend to lean into initiatives that align with their organization. NFL's not quite as savvy at that, but they do have programs as well. They have the NFL Play 60, which does something similar. It's encouraging kids not necessarily to play football, although that obviously is something they support. It also encourages kids to get 60 minutes a day of some type of physical activity. So that's the NFL also trying to encourage at the youngest level how you can be active and how sports can make a difference. Sports can make a difference in your mental health. It can make a difference in your physical health. And as I stated from my previous examples, it can also make a difference in society and culture. So that's examples of the macro level as well as the micro level.
The micro level. So you basically answered my second question in regards to, how does sports, promote social causes. Can you tell me, just out of interest, how do you feel when you hear journalists tell superstar athletes saying, things such as shut up and dribble? How do you feel about those types of comments?
It's offensive, to be quite honest. Excuse me. Before I pivoted into academia, sorry, scratchy throat, allergies.
No, take your time.
It's that time of the year. It's offensive because regardless of how high profile athletes are, regardless of how well they're compensated, they're humans. Let's start there. Number one, they're humans. And as humans, we all have feelings, we all have thoughts, we all have ideas and opinions. We all have something to bring to the table other than the work that we do, right? And oftentimes the work that we do is one way we earn our living, but it's oftentimes also our platform in how we show up and make a difference in the world, right? People who become doctors, I'm sure they want to be doctors and make a good living, but they are people who innately want to save lives or make lives better. Athletes are no different. And so when journalists do that, it's demeaning and it's disrespectful because you're not acknowledging the humanity in that person. And they are that first. First and foremost, they are human. Secondarily, they are also citizens, tax-paying citizens. So they have a right to care about causes. They have a right to care about politics. They have a right to have an opinion. They also have a right to use their platform to share that information, especially if they're doing it strategically and responsibly. It's one of the more powerful ways of making a difference. And when I first started working in sports, I worked in sports in grad school at Ohio State, but my first opportunity working in professional sports was with the Orlando Magic. And I distinctly remember a couple things about my stint there. First, in the interview, I remember them asking me, are you going to be starstruck? Can you work with high profile athletes? Or are you going to spaz? Are you going to fangirl? Can you be composed? And I answered honestly. I said, it'll be very cool to meet some of the people that I watch and admire, but I am here to do a job. I got a degree to make this my profession. So once that initial meeting passes, they are colleagues to me. And I was very sincere about that. And I've been sincere about that since. So that is the tone I set as how I show up in the industry. So when I look across the spectrum, I want to see that in others, including journalists, including news and media outlets. Mm-hmm. Another thing I remember about that time is I recall we had an athlete. I won't name names.
No names.
He had a very high profile crisis at the time in which he was being falsely accused of something by a young woman. Okay. And a lot of people felt entitled to judge him because he was wealthy. Well, he makes enough money. He should just pay her off, or he should do just this, or he should just do that. Again, reducing his humanity. Ultimately, once the facts of the case were out, and he was never charged. It was just really bad media. The woman was lying, and she was trying to extort money. And so, again, that's not the story that gets told. The story is this high-profile athlete has been accused of something egregious. And so I remember then, again, thinking to myself, you don't have a right to assume anything because this person is famous or because they make a lot of money. They still need the same just approach that any of us would desire and any of us would want. And so I think people need to think before they speak, especially if you're in the media. I am not trained to be a journalist, but I do have degrees in English and I have degrees in communication. So I definitely had classes that overlap that space. And
Mhm.
you're supposed to be telling a story without putting in your opinion. And I don't think we see as much of that as we once did. And I don't think we see as much of it as we need. We need more,
Objectivity, yeah, is very rare.
we need more objectivity. We need more.
Mhm.
It's okay to have an opinion, but you shouldn't always interject that opinion into the story or into the narrative. You should tell as much of that objectively as possible, as factually as possible, and let people make the judgment for themselves. Let people exercise their own discretion. So yeah, I find it offensive. I think that's probably the most politically correct way I can answer that question. It is a political question.
It is. It is. I'm sorry.
No, not political in a bad way, but politics is nasty, and sports is not immune to that. I guess is what I'm saying. And so that's why I say is I get very defensive because I thought I was done, but one more thing. I also see these people as my peers. When I was a fan, I was a fan. I grew up loving sports. My dad was a coach. I've gone to games my whole life. I played myself, I didn't rise to the level of competition to the collegiate level, but I've always been involved in sports or spectating sports or in the business of sports. And so I see these folks as my peers in many ways. They are my colleagues. Even the players on the court, if you work for a team, they're kind of your colleagues, right? They may not be the colleagues that sit in the office with you, but you're all part of the same organization, working towards some end goal, a championship, sold out arenas, a great fan base, all the things. And so that's the other reason that I find great offense in those comments, because I'm very protective of my own. And I mean that industry wise, I mean that as a woman, I'm protective of women. I'm protective of other Black and brown people. I'm very protective. So when I hear those statements, for me, it's not something I just dust off. It's something that I take very seriously and like to see it mitigated. And the particular comment you just spoke to, I remember LeBron James capitalized on it and he launched a docuseries as a result of it. And so that's the cool thing about it is you can sleep on athletes if you want. You can sleep on sports industry people if you want. But the really good ones, they're going to take that negative and they're going to exponentially make it into a positive.
Mhm. That's great. That's great. This leads me to another question I have. As obviously you've been in the sports industry for a very long time. As a woman, what obstacles have you overcome? In being in sports leadership, and what achievements do you most find rewarding?
I have to take a deep breath because of a couple of reasons. Number one, before I can even answer the question, context. I just chose what I loved. I just had enough wisdom at a young age. I wouldn't say I was wise about everything. Few of us are, but I did know, I was abundantly clear when I was in college that this is the last hurrah. When you leave university, you're going to enter the adult world and you will have to work the rest of your life. There's no more classes. There's no more sorority and fraternity parties. There's no more like studying and lounging on the lawn. Like it's real world, right? And I don't know why I was thinking about it so so seriously and sincerely at that age, but I was. So I was like, if I got to work the rest of my life, I got to love it. I have to love what I do. I have to enjoy what I do. And I didn't go to college planning to work in sports. I didn't even know that was a quote unquote profession. I knew I liked sports, and I knew I grew up watching games, and I'm from North Carolina, so everything's ACC basketball, Tobacco Road. And I knew I had a dad that kept us immersed in it. But I didn't know it was a profession. I didn't even discover that aspect of it until I was a senior about to graduate. I was really planning to go to law school, to be honest. But the reason I set that tone is because I didn't enter it saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a woman, or I'm going to be a minority trying to work in a male dominated, a white male dominated profession. I didn't think of that at all. So it took me probably about a good 10 years before I felt anything that was remotely prejudicial, or before I felt anything that I felt like was where my identity was a complication. And even once I became aware of it, it's almost like grief, stages of grief. I don't have defined stages, but I think the first time I became acutely aware of it is I just became very frustrated. Because that's something you can't control. We don't get to choose our gender. We don't get to choose our race. We don't get to choose our citizenry, where we're born. And so that was the first thing, that awareness. It was just frustrating because it's like, I'm not falling back. I'm not quitting. So if this is what it is, let me figure this out. So more specifically, that awareness came when I was working for a Division I athletics department. And I already at that time had worked for the Atlanta Braves. I had already worked at that time for Orlando Magic. I had already by that time worked with the Ohio State's athletic department. So I was still young in my career, still my 20s or maybe early 30s, but under 10 years. And I was working for a Division I athletics department, pretty happy with my job, great colleagues, great organization. But one of my colleagues left for another opportunity at a different institution. And so I asked, could I take on his responsibilities? Because within college athletics, it's multiple teams, depending upon the size of the athletics department. It could be 15 teams. It could be, if it's Ohio State, it's 36. And so usually your group, I was in marketing, I was an associate director, you divide up the sports. So when I took that job, I was assigned women's basketball. I was a support person for football, and I ran the point on baseball and softball. Yeah. And when my colleague left, he had been running the point on men's basketball. And so I asked, could I pick up where he left off? Can I take over his sports, and you shift my sports to whoever you hire? Like whoever the new kid is coming in, you can give them my things. And I remember my supervisor at the time, he said, but you're so good at what you do. That's great. I'll be great if you give me this other body of work. Because I really wanted more hands-on football and men's basketball. I did not have a problem with women's basketball. And to the degree I was working with women's basketball, NC State is a great place to be affiliated with women's basketball because it generally has been a nationally ranked program. It is now under the current coach, but at the time it was Coach Yao, who was a Naismith Hall of Fame and Olympian coach. So to the degree that I'm working in women's basketball, I couldn't ask for a more successful, prominent, well-run, highly prominent and recognized program. But the reality is it's what we call the revenue sports that drive your ability to advance professionally. That is why I wanted to work with more of the men's teams. It wasn't me trying to shake the women. It was just, I need this in order to advance. And he said to me, but we hired you because you were a specialist in women's sports. And I just about lost it. Because I literally said to him, I said it cordially and professionally, but I was like, where did you get that idea from? Like, I don't mind working with women's sports because I'm a woman. I said, but where did you get the idea that I was a women's specialist? I was like, do you not recall my resume? I said, I never worked for a women's team until I came here. I worked for an NBA team. I worked for a Major League Baseball team. At Ohio State, I worked on multiple sports, including football, including basketball, including track and field. So where did you get this thought that I should be relegated to women's basketball? That was the first time that awareness kicked in, because this person literally, who hired me? So you have to have some type of recollection who you hired. But I was 2-3 years in probably, and I was just flabbergasted that he was
You
trying
did
to,
it.
that he wanted to pigeonhole me on his perception, not on the reality of what I brought to the table. It was his perception. Well, you're a woman, so therefore.
You just stick with that. Mm-hmm.
So that was tough. That was the first time I experienced that, and as much as I loved that job and that place, it was the first time I was like, okay, I got to move on. I can't convince. I'm not here to convince people that I'm good at what I do. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to let the work speak for me. But I'm not here to like convince people who are misogynistic or biased, and they don't even know they are, because I'm certain that that was not his intention. I'm not here to change their minds or convince them. I need to be somewhere where maybe somebody sees what I'm bringing to the table. So that was probably the first time. And then one other time, and not to say there weren't many times, because in hindsight, I see it. In the moment, I didn't see it. That was one I did, but that was gender. It wasn't racial. I can't really say that I ever felt, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I don't recall feeling anything that was ever based in the race space, although I'm sure it existed. What I did observe, though, because it wasn't just me, I saw it with my friends and industry peers, is sometimes we would lose opportunities to people less qualified that happen to be white gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the pattern, even if I wasn't experiencing it, because I was losing jobs to men. It didn't matter if they were black, white, blue, green, yellow, red, orange. They could have been rainbow shades. I was losing to men. So I was acutely becoming aware of the gender bias. But I personally never experienced the racial bias. If anything, the racial dynamic for me, I found helpful, because you could work better with athletes, because a lot of people do give them a hard time. But when they see you coming, I'm not a threat to them. And they know that. They feel more comfortable. They'll talk to me. They know I'm not going to take their words out of context if I'm, capturing quotes. And so being a Black woman in particular, being a woman, I think just how we move in the world made that an asset. So it was the career advancement piece. So yeah, that's how I recollect it. And now that I look backwards, I can see other instances where race and or gender was in play. But I really went a long time without it even phasing me. And even once it did, I didn't look at it as an obstacle or as a hardship. In fact, I've even said this to people. I was like, people who are born blind only know that they're blind. They've never had sight. People who are born with some type of, I prefer to use the word different ability rather than disability. That's all that they know. If they are born with that, that's very different than losing an ability. That becomes a disability. But if you're born differently, that's your normal, right? And so that's how I've always approached my gender and my ethnicity. This is who I am. This is how I show up in the world. This is all I got. I don't know anything else, and I'm proud of it. So rather than me try to figure out what your malfunction is, I'm just going to rise to the occasion and exceed. I'm going to go harder. We're already raised to do that. Many of us that are Black or brown, like you got to go twice as hard to get half as far or same distance. But I'm going to raise the bar even higher, because I'm always going to outdo you. And I'm definitely going to outdo what you think of me. I'm not going to let you put me in that box. And so that's how I've navigated it. It is what it is. This is how God formed me.
I love it.
I'm going to rock it, and I'm going to do
There
it
you
well.
go. Love it. Love that mindset. I'm sure a lot of people will learn a lot from what you just said. And also a lot of organization, because you mentioned something about, um, you're being a black woman in this space. You're not a threat to, let's say, predominantly black, leagues, such as, talking about NBA,
Yeah.
NFL. Not so sure about the MLB now, but it's
It is very colorized as well. The MLB is interesting though because their players are oftentimes Latin Americans,
Mhm.
whether it's Dominican or Cuban. A lot of them come from the brown diaspora.
Mhm.
But you're right, the fan base is very Caucasian.
Mhm.
So MLB is kind of like a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But to your point, NBA predominantly black, NFL is predominantly black, with probably 50-50 in terms of fans and viewership. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, 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 no problem at all. I think it's interesting. Organizations can see the benefit of having diversity in its leadership roles, right? Of having, people are non-threatening, people are actually can are used to the ways of, maybe thinking or habits. So good, good. That's a
Yeah,
great thing.
I think the bias. First of all, humans are biased. Let's just be honest with ourselves, all of us, even me. If I'm not saying prejudice and bias are two different things.
Hmm.
I'm not prejudiced. I'm not discriminatory. But bias is what I mean is we are all looking for the familiar. We're all looking for a connection. So if I'm at a conference, it's particularly a sports conference, when I walk in the room, I probably am scanning to see how many black people are in that room. I don't have to make friends with them. I don't have to talk to everybody. I may know some of them, but I'm scanning for that, right? Am I the only one, or is there 10 people in the room, or is there 500? Same thing when you're a woman, you walk in the room, like you're scanning. Where are the other women? I don't care what color they are. Where the other, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean by bias. It's not inherently anything wrong because that's really human nature. When you weaponize it, it's when it's not cool. When you do use it for discrimination and when you do use it for racial suppression. The reason I brought that up is because as I'm listening to you, and I know we're kind of bouncing off each other, is I always tell people this I know to be true. The most deep seated bias is probably actually more generational than it is pure race versus race war or gender bias. Like the old guard, people who were alive and well when civil rights did not exist and it was normal. When we do still have people alive who remember separate bathrooms and separate entrances and separate facilities. And then you have those of us, I count myself in Gen X down, where with each generation it's more diverse and more accepting and more inclusive. So that's the first thing I always say about scores is that bias is 9 times out of 10 is probably more generational than anything else. Because if they can see the value in you, absolutely, they're going to hire you. They're going to utilize you. But the other thing I want to say that neutralizes it a lot of times in sports is money.
Mm.
Money, money colors the world of sports. I remember teaching lessons around the Kaepernick uh, scenario because it was actively happening at a time that I was teaching undergrads, and we would talk about it. And I always wanted them to again look beyond the obvious. I want you to pull the curtains back. Let's examine this from a business perspective. And I remember telling students, I was like, the truth of the matter is he was costing them money. I said, if they thought they were going to make more money, they would have told him to stay on his knee, and they would have told everybody else to get on their knees too. It's like, but he was costing them money. He was costing them money, not because he was protesting, not because he was on knee, because he was making their fans mad. It was money. Above all else, it was money. If it could have played differently and all of that would have earned them money, they would have like do more. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
those things I just wanted to like throw into the ether there are that you got to factor in generational dynamic and you got to factor in capitalism.
Yeah. Speaking of capitalism and money, I want to switch to women's college basketball, women's basketball in general.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the reasons we actually connected. Is
Yes.
seeing your comments online, it's like, wow, I need to speak to
Yeah.
Dr. Frederick. This,
Yeah. I don't normally bite the hook and go down the rabbit hole, but something about that conversation was driving me batty, and I needed I needed to add some context.
Break it down. Break it down for, for those who don't know, please.
Well, I think that particular conversation started with someone else's post.
Yes.
And I think she was trying to make the case for pay equity for women, which is valid. It's absolutely valid. And actually, she was doing equal pay for equal work. And I think when I jumped into the conversation, it had been maybe 15 to 20 comments posted. It became a behemoth, as you and I both know. I think it went on to have 500.
Yeah.
And so somewhere in that 15 to 20, she had retorted back to one of the commenters, like, if this isn't a good example, tell me what is. Because really what people were doing was like, this is a horrible example. Like, why are you doing this? Or like, you need to pick a different, but nobody was explaining to her why it was a poor example. And so when I made my comment, that is all I was really honestly trying to do. I was trying to answer the question. I was trying to give her the feedback that she was asking for, that the other people were coming at her, but not giving her the context. And so it started out with me just giving like basic context, because there's a lot of context, but I was just trying to give her the highlight reel. And man, that thing took off from there. That just became a whole thing. And then, as I like to say on the internet, I'm never going to go to somebody else's page and start controversy. That's not in my nature. I wasn't going to her page to start controversy. I was trying to offer context and clarity. But if I make a comment to someone else, I'm not talking to you. And as we colloquially say, if you come for me and I didn't send for you, let's do this. And so that was what was happening. There were people that were responding to my comment. And I'm like, well, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So I had to add more context. I had to add more information, because I'm a fair person. I look through I am optimistic. I am positive. I am one who looks at obstacles and I'm like, okay, I can't go through. Can I go over? I can't go over. Can I go around? If I can't go around, can I bore holes? Like, that's how I move through life in general. Do I have setbacks? Absolutely. Do I have good days and bad days? Absolutely. But I'm always going to throw the pity party, and I'm always going to give the pity party a curfew. And so that's what I mean when I say I'm a realist and an optimist at the same time. But there were people in that chain, that thread, they just weren't being honest brokers. They kept wanting to return to, but you muted her point. No, I didn't mute her point. She's talking about equal pay for equal work if we're showing up as doctors and nurses. Doctors and nurses are doing equal work. So a female doctor should be paid what a male doctor is. But their salaries also are not contingent on a business model in which your work is not a service. Your work, as in your performance as an athlete, is a product. You are a product that they put on the court. The worker bees are the people in the front offices and the people behind the scenes like me. But the people who show up and play a game, the game is the product. Mm-hmm. It is the product. And so that's why you can't, that's a false equivalency. And that's, to your point, how that conversation started. And I was trying to help people who weren't aware understand that while we absolutely want the WNBA to do well, to succeed, to pay more, we have to be honest brokers. And the WNBA real time does not yet command that level of audience. It doesn't yet command that level of ticket sales, multimedia rights, all of those things. But more importantly, while it is still growing, it is growing upward. It's an upward trajectory. It's solidly moving in the right direction. If we're honest, it's 28 years old. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be an honest broker, I need you to rewind to 1974 when the NBA was 28 years old. And the NBA was not paying millions of dollars. It was not making millions, and it was trying very hard not to fold because it was very much the same as the WNBA. These are, in the ways that it is a traditional business, you have to pour a lot in for the business to be a success. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I think it's something like 1 in 5 businesses will fold. And that's all businesses. That's not even talking about sports, which is a whole other level. That's what I was aiming for. It's like, they are doing well. They are getting more. But brass taxes, it doesn't even break even yet. They still take, NBA still takes a loss. So they believe in the product, excuse me, and the product is growing, as in the game. And the superstars are there, but they were always there. It's just that we have more ways of being aware. When I worked in women's college basketball, NC State was a top 10 program. Carolina was a top 10 program. Duke was a top 10. Women's, I'm talking women's. That Summit was still alive and well. Tennessee was a top 10 program. Gina Ariamo, who's still at Connecticut, was a top. These were perennial, recurring legacy programs. But you also didn't have streaming. You didn't have social media. You didn't have Instagram. You didn't have people who could just drop put a drop of water in the social media ocean and ripple out. Back then, you just had regular TV. If they are not on TV, you didn't see them. I watched Dawn Staley play. She's a few years older than me, but she was an undergrad at UVA. And my memory is clear that I saw her play. It's not a memory I made up. And I know it because I remember thinking how outstanding she was then. And even now, I liken her to kind of an Iverson in her play. She was very aggressive. She was very streetwise.
Yeah. I remember. I'm old enough to remember.
Yes, right?
Yeah.
So the superstars were always there, but they didn't necessarily have the exposure. And the exposure is 50%. Yes, people are starting to support and be on board, but a lot of it just has to do with, it's a different era. We have more ways of consuming things, and we have niche ways of consuming things.
So would you say we're on the up and up right now? Because it seems like more than ever right now, especially the past few months, it seems like it's blowing up. It's going into a great place.
Absolutely. It's what I call a 25-year overnight success story. Like, it looks like it's overnight success. It's 25 years of people putting in, people who the new fans have never seen, never thought of, don't know. I have a close friend. She's a very prominent women's basketball broadcaster. And she's worked with ESPN. She's worked with the WNBA. She's called women college games. And she, as her career became more successful, she was given the option to do her job for men's as well. She made a conscious choice to stick with women's because she was a former player herself and she wanted to grow that game. And so those are the people don't see or they're not aware of. So yes, it's absolutely headed in the right direction, but it's also a baby. It is a baby in the spectrum of professional sports. It's a baby compared to the NBA. The NBA was founded in 1946. It's a full 50 years older than the WNBA, a full 50 years. Baseball's even older than that, and football's older than that. Football goes back to the 1800s. I'm talking about professional play.
Yeah.
And so when you say that it's 28 years old, it's not, you know what? I give it a little bit of credit. It's no longer a baby. It's a toddler.
It's a toddler now?
It's a toddler. But it's still 50 years is a big difference. Why would I expect to have the same like net worth or wisdom as my grandparents? That's what we're saying. Why would I have that when they're 50 years older than me?
Yeah.
So I just like to check the context and then have the conversation and then say, okay, now we can talk about what needs to happen to grow the game. Now let's talk about what needs to happen for women to get higher salaries. Now let's talk about how do we sell out every stadium, not just the ones where Caitlin Clark will be. How do we do that? That now can we have that conversation? And I would add things.
How do we do it? How do we do it?
Well, along those lines, and I add this. This is another, I think, tipping point people aren't drilling down to, which is, and you've probably read some of my stuff by now. So the WNBA was founded in 1996, but we got to go back further than that. 1972, Title IX is what literally federally created opportunities for women to play organized sports at the collegiate and university level. really at all levels, but it was a profound impact at the collegiate and university level. But it took till 1982 for the NCAA to sanction women's sports. So now women are playing for a solid 10 years on campuses, organized sports, organized teams, hired coaches, but they're still not part of the NCAA until 1982. But here's the real kicker. So now I've already put the WNBA on the shelf because that's the ultimate, right? But the feeder system is still collegiate sports. It was 2 years ago, when the NCAA finally allowed women's basketball to even use the marketing and branding of March Madness.
Wow.
And if you think about it, there's a lot of forces that have created this moment at the collegiate level and at the professional level. Some of those forces have been toddling along for the last 25 to 50 years. But the biggest forces have been in the last 5 to 10. And in case of the NCAA, the last 2. March Madness has existed as an independent brand for about 50 years and change. So you're talking about a phrase that whether you like basketball or not, whether you follow basketball or not, whether you have favorite players or not, whether you know teams or coaches, whether you know a thing about basketball, when you hear March Madness, you know what that's about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the power of that branding. But women weren't allowed to use it until 2022.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Wow.
And so to me, that's the tipping point. Malcolm Gladwell, for any of your listeners, has a book called The Tipping Point, and it's about this. It's about the phenomena of what looks like is just now happening, but really it had been a build, and then there's something that pushes it over. So I think that along with the 3-way rivalry of Iowa, South Carolina, and LSU, and the visibility of that, and they all had really larger than life superstars, and also these are great coaches for all the wonderful things about Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso and Caitlin Clark for all their gifts. These are all outstanding coaches, and they didn't become outstanding now. They've been outstanding forever. Kim Mulkey is one of the greatest. She's a legacy. Dawn Staley is the latest legacy. She is the new generational talent. Unfortunately, Iowa's coach name escapes me in this moment. I can see her face. But my point being, you had a 3-way rivalry that everybody was tuning into, and people who weren't tuning in were curious. What's going on here? We had women that were smack talking out loud on the court. People not used to that. They were like, okay, women are competitive. Yeah, maybe. But no, we're competitive and we're intense. So we can be entertaining too. And we're not doing it to entertain you. This is what we were doing all along. So you got those forces. And then you got social media. And again, you got a convergence. So I think the last 2 years was a tipping point that allowed for everything that had been building for 25 years to spill over. And now we went from simmering, if I do speak metaphorically quite a bit, we're not simmering anymore. Somebody lit a fire. The spark has been lit. But all along, people were putting in wood and putting in paper and prepping what you needed to get that fire going. And then the fire started simmering. And now the spark has been lit. And so now the goal is to grow it. And it's all of those things. So to answer your question, it's pretty straightforward. You need to do the same things you did for the men. And the beautiful thing about that is, for women's basketball anyway, is the NBA has a blueprint. They need to just color the blueprint pink. What did you do when you were 28, 30 years old and still struggling financially to get over the hump? Now, some of what they do is strategic for sure. Some of it is organic. Strategic stuff is like the right multimedia rights deals on the right platforms, the right games on the right days. Even most recently, a lot of hype around Caitlin Clark's game. Made sure that was broadcast, but they didn't broadcast Angel Reese and Camila at the Chicago Sky. People were pissed, and they made it vocal. Those games have now been added to the lineup. So you got to get the right multimedia rights deals. All games are not televised. We know that, but that doesn't happen at any level. I mean, well, NBA, NFL, professional sports, yes, but not even in every market. But college basketball is select games, right? Every single game for every single college is not going to be on TV every single weekend. So you got to pick the right mix up. Ticket sales, you got to sell your tickets because gate receipts matter, because ticket sales are one type of profit. But once you get people in the building, now you can split that profit. You can make it more diverse. Now you can sell merchandise. Now you can sell concessions. Now you can sell beverages. Like, one thing drives the other once you get them in the building. But you also want people excited about players. So Caitlin Clark's jersey sold out. Andrew Reese's jersey sold out. Make sure the merchandise is available when people want it, unless you're purposefully trying to create a limited stock because you're trying to raise the price, which that does happen sometimes. There was a Black Kaepernick jersey after he was blackballed, and Nike was selling it. It was his signature 7, but it was all black. It was a football jersey, all black. I wanted that jersey so bad, and I was teaching a class, and I got my little Nike notification at 10:15. It was going on sale, and I forgot, because I surely would have interrupted my class to make that purchase and went back to business. You never did. I teach sports, so my students would have understood. But that was a limited edition jersey, and so by my class was over in 50 minutes. It was gone.
Wow.
So if you're doing that as part of the strategy, that's great, because you get to charge more money when you do that. But right now, I don't think you need to be in that space. I think you need to be in space of catch up to the energy. The momentum is here now. So keep up with it so you can grow it. You don't want fans getting frustrated or disappointed when they go to Fanatics and they can't find what they want. Because then they're still excited about the sport and the players, but they're going to get frustrated about, I can't support it. I can't enjoy it. I can't brag. I can't, you know what I mean? They're passionate. They're a unique bunch. They're not customers you have to sell. You don't have to sell people in sports, but you do have to accommodate them if you want them to be loyal, if you want to grow their support. So media, sponsorships, they need more partnerships with the right sponsors, gate receipts, ticket sales,
Jersey sales.
merchandising, licensing, endorsement. Same thing with shoes. I don't know the exact number, but it's rumored to be 20 plus million for Caitlin Clark and some shoes. I think Caitlin Clark is great. She has broken a lot of records. She deserves every whip of accolades she's getting. But I'm being an honest broker. I'm a Black girl. I'm not checking for your shoe. But if you hook me up with an Asia Wilson shoe, I'm there. And it's not to take away from Caitlin, because there's people who's going to want that. But there's others who want this other thing. So representation really does matter. And that includes how you grow the game. You got to make everybody feel like they're a part of this movement.
As you said earlier, just accommodate everyone, just not one particular. And there you have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a little fascinated, honestly, with Caitlin Clark anyway, because, again, for all of her accolades, which she is a gifted player, I can't take that away from her. And I wouldn't want to. I'm just like, but why her? Like, they've been really dope players before. And when I say why her, I'm not even looking at, a lot of people will go straight to the black-white dynamic. And they just want to get into an accusatory mode. Well, it's not black, it's not this. That's not even my question, because there have been dope white girls. Why Caitlin? That's my question. There have been really dope white girls. There's Diana Taurasi. Like, there's Sue Bird. What? So for me, and I'm not saying this as a judgment, it's literal business curiosity. What is it about Caitlin that has skyrocketed? People have broken records before. One of the records she broke was Kelsey Plum, who plays for the Aces, who are the back-to-back champs. What's unique about Caitlin? You know what I mean? Like, I'm dissecting that for myself. And by the way, I don't have an answer, so don't follow up on that one. I don't have an answer.
I was going there. You saw. I was going to go there. That sounds like a case study for your students there.
I'm studying it because I'm curious. I'm legitimately curious. I worked in marketing when I was still in the business, so that's right up my alley. I'm like, what is it about this girl? Like, people have broken records before.
That's interesting.
And look, and of all the 3 teams that people have been watching this rivalry for the last 2 years, she's the only one that doesn't have a ring. And again, not knocking her not having a ring. Charles Barkley doesn't have a ring, and Charles Barkley is Sir Charles. Allen Iverson doesn't have a ring, he's still the answer. So I'm not saying a ring equates to that, but I am saying it's honestly fascinating to me that she has all of these accolades, but not all of the accolades.
It's a great
Yet
question.
she's the person that they have just anointed as like she's changed the game. And I actually correct that when I speak to people. I don't think she's changed the game. Of not the game. She's changed the business. Excuse me. She's changed the business of women's basketball. I wouldn't say she's changed the game. There were Cheryl Swoops. There was a Dawn Staley. There was a Rebecca Lobo. There was a Lisa Leslie. There
Yes.
was Katie Smith. The game has been the same, and there have always been superstars. There have always been generational talents, but she has changed the business model.
That's a great point. Is it marketability or is it? Yeah, it is. We'll know. We'll find out.
We'll find out, right?
Dr. Frederick, I thank you so much for your time breaking down sports business with me and my viewers. I know there's a lot more questions I can ask you, but let's just
I don't
save
know that we
this.
got all of them, did we? I don't
No,
feel
we
like
didn't go through all of them. This could be round one. Let's do a round two. I would love it.
we always do that. I might need a little bit of a time because it took a second, right? We've been playing tag a little bit because it's just a busy time of the year. It's not like this all the time, but it's the end of the semester, getting ready for grades and graduation, and I run the program. So this is when everybody's pushing what I call the panic button, and students are escalating concerns and faculty. And then in the background, I'm fielding interviews. I'm talking to people on podcasts and YouTube, and
Yes. Yeah.
traveling to NFL draft week for conferences to be on panels. So it's just a busy time, but in the best possible way. How's the thing go? Blessed and busy.
This is amazing. I'm able to talk to you. It's great to have an expert, with your accolades to sit down with me. So I like to end my conversation with this. We learn today and we leave tomorrow. So thank you very much for your time.
I love that. I'm gonna have to borrow it.
Hey,
But
borrow that.
thank you for inviting me. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it, and I'm always happy to share my passion and my purpose.
Hey, thank you so much.
All right.
All right.